Off to New England I go. Luke Jones joins us now to discuss all of the lead up to, what's a pretty big football game here, Luke. I don't want to say we haven't had one of these in a while, but the last time we had one like this was in New England with a 14-point lead and hurt feelings. And it has literally felt like since that afternoon till now that it's felt like, well, the Ravens can win again, and certainly with an opportunity to win, and a victory in Foxborough would give them some oomph that they're going to need, because clearly the Steelers look pretty good on Sunday afternoon in Buffalo, right?
Yeah, Pittsburgh put the pressure on, there's no doubt about it, and as I joked on Sunday afternoon, Ravens probably not going to be sending Rex Ryan a Christmas card after that effort from the Bills, and I get it, the final score made it look like, it was a one-possession game. Buffalo got their butts kicked. That game could have been much worse. Ben Roethlisberger threw 3 picks, yet they could not stop Le'Veon Bell, who had just shy of 300 yards from scrimmage. So it does put the pressure on the Ravens. This isn't a must-win game, but one, you want to remain tied with Pittsburgh. A loss in this game pretty much takes away any chance of winning the division without a win over the Steelers Week 16. And that's fine. I think most people have kind of envisioned that needing to be something they have to do.
Yeah, Christmas Day is a playoff game. We all know that, right?
Yeah,
no matter what happens this weekend, it is, right?
Right. So that part of it's not, not exactly shocking. I think a lot of people thought that it was possible Buffalo could pull off the upset, and Pittsburgh's played well. You give them credit. But
when I saw the snow coming down and the weather, I thought, it's anybody's game. Anything can happen here, right?
Right, exactly. But a Bills offense that just couldn't get anything going with any level of consistency. But really going back to the first point you made, this is an opportunity for the Ravens, who are coming off of their most impressive win of the year, but it was a very mediocre Dolphins defense. They were playing at home. There were plenty of questions of how good Miami was. The Ravens beat the tar out of them, and, hey, you love seeing that, but this is an opportunity now to emphatically announce their return to that top tier of contenders in the AFC. You go to Foxborough, you beat the Patriots under these circumstances, then record-wise you're not right there with the top teams in the conference, but you're just a notch below them, and you're in good position. And you've then done what is the toughest task to do in the entire AFC, and that's go to Foxborough and beat the Patriots. So,
yeah, if you can do that, you can do anything.
You can do anything, right. Nothing's off the table then. A win doesn't mean the Ravens are bound for the Super Bowl, but it certainly makes that feel like it's a much more attainable goal, especially understanding that you might have to go back to Foxborough a month from now and play. So
if you're lucky, right? Literally, at this point, if you're lucky.
Exactly.
You'd love to draw that assignment to have to go to Oakland or Kansas City or New England. You'd like to be in that position, quite frankly, and that's what this is all about. Look, if they can't climb the hill in Foxborough, if they can't get up in the afternoon on Christmas Day, they're just not going to be playing on January 7th or 8th, and they will have earned that. 2 weeks ago, we're talking about them being mediocre and 500 and meh and okay, and the offense being blah and the defense being the best we've seen in a while, and the kicker being the MVP, right? That was the conversation 2 or 3 weeks ago. Now we're talking about, can Joe Flacco go into New England and win a football game on a cold night, right?
Yeah, but the funny thing is, what you just said, that's not entirely true anymore in terms of if they can't beat New England, if they can't beat Pittsburgh. Now, I would agree, if they can't beat those teams, they don't deserve to be a playoff team.
Well, they won't be a playoff team, right?
Well, I'm not so sure about that anymore, though. If you look at it, Denver,
all these teams suck.
They're 8-5. You have the Dolphins, who did win, but they lose Ryan Tannehill to what is likely an ACL injury, so he's done for the year.
Yeah, they're not going to win anymore, right?
So they're looking at Matt Moore. Their schedule's not impossible, but they do play their next 2 games on the road. They play at Buffalo and at the Jets. I can't remember the order off the top of my head, but those 2 games, and then they play New England at home. You have Tennessee, who is coming on, but they're 7-6. They're not anything special. So now you look at Denver, who has, everyone's talked about the Ravens' remaining schedule. Look at their final 3 games. That is an absolute bear. So it's funny, while I would agree with the sentiment that if the Ravens can at least win one of these 2 games against New England and Pittsburgh, then you say, well, they don't deserve to be a playoff team. Well, that's well and good, and I would agree with that. but I'm not so sure that's how it would play out.
Yeah, but if they finish 9-7 and sneak in, oh well, we'll get on a plane, go somewhere, right?
And then you wait and see what happens. And look, no one's picking them to win the Super Bowl if it plays out that way, but it just speaks to how this conference, everyone has assumed that the AFC West would get those 2 wild cards, and look, they're definitely getting one of them. I mean, even Oakland, who had the Thursday night loss to Kansas City, they're still sitting at 10-3. They're still in great shape. But Denver now, 8-5, no running game whatsoever. I mean, they signed Justin Forsett off the street or claimed him off waivers, and he ended up carrying the football for them quite a bit and didn't have a whole lot of success. But you look at the Broncos now at 8-5, home against New England, at Kansas City, home against Oakland. They drop 2 of those 3, then they're sitting at 9-7 as well.
Well, let's be honest here. If they beat New England, the Ravens are now in line to win 10 games, no matter what happens on the other side to these other, other teams. A win in New England would put them, for the first time, we'd say into the playoff position as something other than just they have to win in Pittsburgh on Christmas Day. So, I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying. I mean, I'm buying what you're selling me, and I guess that's what Sunday did, right? Sunday and the problems Buffalo had, the problems Miami had, now the door's open in other ways for the Ravens that we never saw for like 2 months, right? Literally. One afternoon clarifies that in this league. That's how crazy it is.
Yeah, I mean, it turned out to be a mixed bag because clearly the best path to the playoffs is still winning the division because you can control that. The Ravens have no control over what's going to happen with the Denver Broncos or what's going to happen with Miami or what's going to happen with Tennessee, even though I don't think anyone's viewing them as an incredible threat.
Yeah, they keep winning, dude. I don't know. They just beat the teams in front of them, right?
Hey, they're a team that is doing what a lot of people thought Jacksonville would do in that division this year. I mean, Tennessee. But
hey,
again,
dude, Ravens losing Foxborough, they're both 7-6. So,
sure.
They don't smell any better or any worse than we do at this point,
it's very
right?
fair. But the thing that the Ravens have going for them, and I just want to tie this in with while we're talking about the wild card here, and it sounds a little defeatist, but hey, we don't know if the Ravens are going to go to Foxborough.
Any path to January is a good path. We followed that path.
Sure. But the Ravens right now, entering their Monday night game, 7-2 in the AFC right now. And we know, other than head-to-head, which they do have a head-to-head against Miami, but if there are ties with any of these other teams, including Denver, they're right now, 7-2 is, I believe, the best record in the conference other than New England, and I think that would have them tied with Kansas City and Oakland, who are obviously a couple games ahead of them. So, it just, their position for the wild card looks a lot better now than it did 3-4 weeks ago. As you said, we weren't even talking about that possibility, but it's a product of one. It's not a great conference. It's not a great NFL this year. Let's face it. You have 2 or 3 teams that look really good at the top. You have a few teams at the bottom, like Cleveland, like San Francisco, who are just god awful, and then you have a bunch of teams in the middle to varying degrees of good to okay to pretty bad, and then you just kind of figure out where all those teams rank week to week, and it really does vary. But the Ravens, long story short, they are in a little bit better position now from a wild card standpoint. So that does give you a little more optimism, even looking at these trips they're going to make the next 2 of the next 3 games against really tough opponents on the road.
Amazing how much you can get accomplished not doing a damn thing sitting on the couch on a Sunday, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, all they needed was if the Bills had been able to just take care of business on their home field in snowy Buffalo, then you would have been talking about Sunday being an absolute brilliant day for the Ravens. But as it stands, there was some good to go along with the disappointment of Pittsburgh handling business. And Steelers, you have to give them credit. They've won 4 in a row, and they're looking a lot better than they did a month ago, much like the Ravens.
Well, and, Rex Ryan might not have a job by the time they kick off in Foxborough from all the reports and sort of the wackiness of the couple that owns that franchise up there and their hands-on approach and Tyrod. I mean, it's amazing. Even teams near 500, the insurrection begins, right? I mean, you lose 1 week, and and week to week, things start to smell better or start to smell worse for a lot of teams, including the Houston Texans, who just hang around, right? I mean, the Colts, who just can't get out of their own way, and Andrew Luck tripping over his own feet and everything else that goes wrong there. But, I mean, there is such mediocrity. I mean, look what happened to Seattle on Sunday. Green Bay's season was over, right? Well, no, it's not. And Seattle was just going to be like the 12th man, and everybody, that's not happening all of a sudden. I mean, the Redskins won. The Eagles are coming in here stinking next week, right?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. A month ago, we were talking about that Eagles team being a much bigger threat than what they appear to be now. Although they played Washington tough, they were driving at the end of the game. It was a strip sack, and Washington was able to preserve a win. But I mean, it is so week to week. We talk about this all the time, yet every week we still end up being surprised by what we see. I mean, who would have predicted the Ravens scoring 38 points and beating a team that had won 6 straight by 32 points last Sunday? And suddenly you're talking about an offense that's been below average all year long. So many people talking about the Ravens being a real threat. Well, they'll have a chance to prove it against the Patriots. Certainly they'll have a chance to prove it in a couple weeks when they go to Pittsburgh on Christmas Day. But again, you have all these different teams that you leave for dead. I think back to Minnesota starting 5-0, and so many people were talking about them being a Super Bowl team, and you see where they are now. And Green Bay left for dead just a few weeks ago, and you could make an argument they might be the hottest team in the league right now.
Arizona and Carolina falling apart, never really becoming a factor at all in the NFC. That's as shocking to me as Dallas being this, overwhelming tyrant of a team at this point. I mean, no one saw Arizona and Carolina crashing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Arizona, just because Carson Palmer older, I think there was some thought there. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald, an older player, even though they have plenty of young talent, I could have seen a drop-off there. Maybe not to this degree, but that's a team I wouldn't have been shocked if you told me before. Carolina, I'm definitely surprised by. And that's not to say that I thought that they were truly as great as their regular season record was a year ago. I didn't expect them to go 15-1. But for them to go 5-8 and to fall off in their defense to be as mediocre as it's been, and I know they lost Josh Norman, but they have not looked right all year long. And
Cam Newton's outfit didn't look right after the game on Sunday either, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, the
Mr. Yuck is green.
Aside from last week, he should be benched for that attire. I mean,
right.
I've seen some of his outfits. He can dress. He can be a sharp dresser sometimes. That was not a good example.
Rodney Harrison said he makes too much money.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. Luke Jones joining us here. We got football, and more football. Anything you want to say on the baseball thing from last week, just to sort of shoehorn it in here on a Monday briefly, or no?
Well, I mean, nothing really surprising with the Orioles. I mean, did anyone really expect them to do much at the winter meetings? I didn't. Clearly the Sale trade is huge. The Red Sox were already the favorite to win this division because of all the young talent they have, and they've just, they've put a chasm between themselves and the rest of this division in terms of expectation. Ultimately, you got to play it on the diamond, so you see how it plays out. But I think you have to be impressed with what Chicago did, the White Sox, with their rebuilding effort. I mean, forget about the return they got for Sale. The return they got from the Nationals for Adam Eaton was just shocking to me. So to me, those two teams were the big winners at the winter meetings, and
everybody thinks the Nationals got fleeced, right? I mean, that's the word.
And look, I mean, Adam Eaton's a good player, but to give up what they gave up for him, and he's going to play center field, which 2015 he kind of struggled in center field. I mean, he had great numbers playing right field last year, so that was kind of surprising to see. But I guess the big overall story, if you're not talking specific to any teams, is just the absolute winners that the closers have been this offseason, and probably not shocking, one, because of what we saw in the postseason, and you always have these trends, flavors of the month in any sport, quite frankly, but not surprising given the way that bullpens were utilized and just the emphasis that we saw in the postseason, and that's been an effect that we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years. And also, you didn't have any big frontline starting pitchers on the open market. You had guys available via trade, and we could still see, whether it's an Archer or someone like that dealt at some point here over the next several weeks.
And what his value will actually be at this point, right?
Yeah. But just to see the money spent, I mean, it's amazing to think what Andrew Miller got 2 years ago, 2 off seasons ago,
is a bargain.
That is an absolute steal. When you see what Mark Melancon got, I mean, Aroldis Chapman, one thing, fine. Even though I still think that's kind of a peculiar signing for the Yankees when you think about the fact that they're in this rebuilding/reloading phase. And look, I like their young talent, but I'm not ready to pencil them in for a 95-win season. So that kind of seems like not unexpected, but still just a weird signing and that kind of a commitment. And Joe Girardi's going to use him as a one-inning guy. So, it's just, all this value that you see, and you see how closers are used in the
until October.
Yeah.
That's part of this whole thing is, we'll use him, 64 times for an inning during the season. But in October, we're going to get, 38 pitches out of him 3 nights in a week, and he's going to be a difference maker. And, that's what we saw happen here. That's what we've seen happen going back to the Kansas City Royals a couple of years ago, right?
It is, but, that's a lot of money you're spending for the chance to have that guy in the postseason. I mean, it's just, I think what you saw Terry Francona do with Andrew Miller, and he was even doing that, let's keep in mind, he was doing that in August and September when they acquired him. Not to that extreme workload, but being selective in when he was using him, not just saying, okay, he's going to be our closer. It helped that he had Cody Allen, but he was going to use him in the 7th inning.
Well, it also helped that he didn't have a race in September, too, right?
Sure. So, that was an interesting move to me. It's a ton of money for a closer. 2, the whole domestic violence thing with him specifically. But it's not surprising. It's the Yankees. They weren't going to be in rebuild mode very long. They do it for a couple months, and they're still going to be in position to spend a lot of money here over the next couple of years. But bringing it back to the Orioles, the one thing I did want to mention, the Jose Bautista thing. Look, there are plenty of reasons why Jose Bautista might not be a good fit for the Orioles. I think how the players and how the clubhouse feels about him, given the history, I think the fact that a draft pick is attached to him, those are very valid reasons. Dan Duquette's reasoning that you don't want to sign him because the fans don't like him, that was dumb. And I think some of that's just posturing, but it's
stupidity. It's dumbness.
It's just why? Because here's the thing, Nestor. Forget about Jose Bautista, but think about his agent, all the players that other players he represents and will represent in the future. Why burn that bridge?
That's the Oriole way. That's the way the old man operates.
You're hurting his value there, and it just you have nothing to gain from it. And look, there's a certain segment of fans I'm sure ate that up. To me, again, he's not a guy. I don't want to see this team continuing to just give up draft picks, especially when there are other moves that you can make where you don't have to give up draft picks. You know how I've felt about that, especially with the Gallardo move.
Yeah, especially when it's for someone that is not what you want. Giving up a draft pick for Trumbo for a year or something? Okay, I'll get that.
So I have no problem with it behind closed doors saying, we're going to go in a different direction. That's fine. To voice that as being the reason was just, it's comical. It's not smart. It's not a good way of doing business. But we'll see how this is going to play out. They're looking for a catcher. Wellington Castillo is someone that they've talked about. I think he would be a quite solid short-term fit. With the hope that Chance Sisco here over the next year and a half becomes the next everyday catcher here. So they have some they have some moves to make. They don't based on what we expect the payroll to be, which is not a dramatic increase from last year. There's not a whole lot of money to be spent if you're working under that assumption. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And one final thought. I'm kind of all over the place here, but
we'll get back to football in a minute too. But yeah, keep going. Once I get you going, it's good.
Talking about the closers, and I want to throw this out there because I feel strongly about this. It is organizational malpractice to not at least explore what you could get for Zach Britton. When you see how crazy this closer market has been, I think it's crazy to not. And I'm not saying to trade him, by the way. I'm just saying, Why would you not at
Dude,
least...
if we could have gotten
explore-
Mancada for him, right? Or Mancada, however, I've heard it pronounced both ways. If you're going to get that kind of maybe not him, obviously, for the starting pitcher and all that.
Sure.
But if it's got that, and back to that, it's also, what's it going to cost to sign him? What's it going to cost to sign Machado? What's it going to cost to sign Scope at this point? Because those guys are going to break the bank. And now you thought Britton was going to be the cheap guy. Hell, they didn't want to pay Jim Johnson here 5 years ago, right?
Well, and you just mentioned it. Look at how they were able to replace Jim Johnson. I mean, at the time, a lot of people... And look, Zach Britton has been way better than Jim Johnson.
Well, the same way they replaced Charlie Brown, George Sherrill, the same way that they'll always be able to replace the closer role.
Replace closers.
Well,
right.
the question would then be, what do you have to show for it when it's all over with? I know what they had in the Andrew Miller deal. They dealt away a kid that's now starting, and might not be starting there because of what they've done in Boston now, but you dealt that away, you let him get out the back door, you then have to go and compete against him, and... you wound up getting a 60-day rental out of a guy who, maybe you should have invested the $9 million and it would have made it better. But there's so many things we could talk about here. The things they've spent money on, like Chris Davis, and the things they didn't spend money on, like Wei and Chen, or Nick Markakis, good and bad, I would say, across the wire, in getting Adam Jones on a bargain. And, they've done some things right and some things wrong, which is why they've been competitive. But it is mind-blowing when you see these other teams go to the winter meetings and come back with real baseball players. And around here, they have an empty stadium and no real mojo to do a whole lot of anything that doesn't feel sort of cheap and impulsive in some sort of strange way, right?
Well, I think the big key here, and look, as far as free agent signings that have been made to this point, there isn't a long list of guys where I'd say, and certainly, Dexter Fowler comes to mind. You knew that wasn't going to happen, but he's the kind of player that clearly would have been a perfect fit for them in a vacuum. We know what happened last year. I'm guessing there wasn't any interest on his side. I'm guessing the Orioles didn't pursue it, and you saw what kind of deal he got. That's not shocking, but I think the big lesson by what you saw with these deals being made is just this absolute need. We've been talking about this for a few years now, from the time that Machado and Scope and Gausman and now Bundy are in the majors. It's just this need that this team has to build its farm system. Because you look at what these teams did with their farm systems to acquire talent. Or in the case of a team like the White Sox, who weren't getting there with the core that they had.
Well, there's nothing more valuable than a farm system, right? I mean, literally, given the amount of money and the amount of talent you can get and move around, if you had an unlimited amount of prospects, even the ones that don't pan out, the Hammonds and the Ochoas. And
plenty of them don't pan out for anyone.
Right, but and who knows what's going to happen with these kids that the Yankees have picked up, the Red Sox have dealt away, the White Sox have acquired. We'll follow all of those guys, but if you don't have any of them, you can't do anything except sign Gallardo in March or whatever, right?
Well, unless you're going to have a really expensive payroll, and the problem with where the Orioles are now with their current group that they have. All of many of their homegrown guys, and even though Tillman technically wasn't homegrown, but a guy young came up under cheap club control. Well, those guys are all costing a lot of money now. So
including Jake Arrieta.
You have a payroll that's continuing to go up, yet you kind of have the same team. So that's where you get into this problem area where you either need to spend a lot more to try to improve, or you need to be more creative in terms of trades or changing the makeup of your club or having a farm system that is replenishing some of that talent that gets to be more expensive or some of those guys that depart. So, they're kind of just, and we've talked about this a little bit over the last couple of years, and they've still continued to prove many of the experts wrong about this, but, they're in that territory where you do ask, are they really good enough to get over the hump as they're currently constructed? And, meanwhile, Adam Jones, free agent in 2 years, Manny Machado, free agent in 2 years, Chris Tillman after this year, Zach Britton in 2 years. The clock's ticking on some of these guys, so that's where you get into that territory where, as I said, why not at least explore what you could get for a Zach Britton. I mean, you might be able to put yourself in a position where there isn't dramatic drop-off, and maybe you hand the closer job over to Michael Givens, and maybe he's ready to take it. But maybe you get 3 awesome pieces to replenish your farm system, and maybe then a year or 2 from now, things aren't looking quite as dire for you in terms of some of these other players becoming free agents. It's all a process. These are all, this is inventory, and inventory gets older and gets too expensive, and and it leaves, and then you have to replenish it. I mean, it's all a cycle.
And it's like a banana; it starts to get rotten.
I mean, we talk about this in the NFL all the time. I mean, you have a salary cap. I know there's no salary cap in Major League Baseball, but many of those same principles apply here. But the problem is the Orioles don't have that supply of young talent that's ready to emerge. I mean, it shouldn't be a big deal that Matt Wieters is, you would think, leaving via free agency. He's not a special player. You and I have talked about that. But the problem is, Chance Sisco still, at least it seems at a minimum, still half a season away, and still questions about him. And that's just one example there that I'm throwing out there. But you should be able to have guys in your farm system that are ready to take the reins, so to speak, from some of these guys that get more expensive, become free agents. And the reality is, no team's able to sign all of their free agents. You need to have young talent ready to replace them.
Look, the Cubs their plan wasn't let's cross our fingers and hold our breath that some double-A slappy is going to come up and catch fire in the big leagues. That's not their plan. Look, we got football ahead. We got plenty of chance to talk baseball. I got you off a little tangent. That's all good. Been a lot of baseball maneuvering this week. We've done a ton of football talk. There's plenty of more of that coming leading up to the game in Foxborough. I'll be on the scene in Foxborough. Luke will be on the fields all week long. And Luke on the backside of this for the Ravens, a short week and getting ready for the Eagles after this, and you just hope they come out of this thing victorious and clean, but they're going to play their ass off like this game matters, like this is a playoff game for them, because certainly it would be the difference, a victory here with them playing in January or not at this point.
I mean, this is a huge opportunity. It's not must-win when you consider where they are right now, but I did say a little bit earlier, it's must-win in terms of if you want to have any designs of still being able to win the division. If you're not able to beat the Steelers Week 16, then, you got to get this one. You're going to have to win one of those 2 games if you want any real chance of winning this division. So I think the big, you mentioned this with being a short week, you hope you come out of it healthy. I mean, that's one area where whether it means a victory against the Patriots or not, the Ravens are really healthy right now, relatively speaking. Going into Week 14, not a single defensive player even listed on the injury report. Guys that are going to miss the game, Crockett Gilmore, Alex Lewis, Lorenzo Talaferro, these are more backup guys at this point. I think even Alex Lewis, when he comes back, there's a good chance he's going to be a backup now, because we know Yonda's playing his position, and Vlad Ducasa's played well. But, they are as healthy as you can reasonably expect to be at this point in the season. Now, a couple plays on Monday night could change that. So it's fleeting, but you hope that continues. You want to get out of this game, hopefully with a win, but probably even more importantly than that, get out of this game healthy, because, as you mentioned, short week, should be able to take care of Philadelphia. I mean, that is not a very good Eagles team. A young team, deficiencies at wide receiver, corner, and get through that one, and then Week 16, Christmas Day showdown. I mean, these teams have been on a collision course. It's felt like most of the year. I think even before the season, we kind of figured that might be that could be a big game. And surely over the last 4 or 5 weeks, it's clear it's a collision course on Christmas, and probably going to serve as that pseudo AFC North title game. So Ravens, heck of a challenge against New England, and they'll have to turn around, take care of Philadelphia. They have to win that one. No questions asked about that. And then you'll see where both those teams are come Christmas. Should be really, really interesting here over the next few weeks. And what more can you ask for than meaningful December football?
Well, I know what I could have asked for. I mean, the freaking Bills on Sunday to show up. I mean, I felt the pain of what it was like to be a Buffalo Bills fan for 3 hours, and it's no fun to be a Buffalo Bills fan, and not even in that attractive Zubaz they wear up there as well. Luke, rest up. We got a lot of football to watch and a lot of football to talk about. It's going to be a big, big night in Foxborough, man. Stay with us.
Sounds good, Ness. Looking forward to it.
Hold on for the ride. He is Baltimore Luke out on Twitter, and Luke at WNST.net. I'll be at Gillette Stadium all evening long. We'll be live on our Twitter and into the night, and doing, without a doubt, conversations late into the night on our Facebook Live as well. You can find me, Nasty, at WNST.net. I am a very available individual. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook and our YouTube, and celebrating 25 years on Tuesday morning. 25 years in Baltimore radio. I'm writing a huge blog out at WNST.net. You want to check that out as well. We will be at Buffalo Wild Wings all evening long, doing the best seat in the house competition. It is the final week there for that and the wing eating competition. Buffalo Wild Wings, Owings Mills. We'll be at Adams Jeep in Aberdeen next Tuesday night with Mike Wallace. That's next Tuesday in time for Christmas on the 20th. It's going to be a big, big week here. Hopefully victorious Purple Conversation. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.